So it's already been mentioned a few times. The aim of the imaging study is to have 100,000 UK Biobank participants. So it's a repeat assessment. So it's drawn from obviously the existing 500,000 UK Biobank participants, and you will come back in, obviously if you want to, and undergo imaging. So what this means in this context is not just imaging of, say, the brain, but full body imaging, multimodal imaging. So MRI of the brain, heart and body, carotid ultrasound, so this measures the large artery in the neck, and a DEXA scan, which provides information on bones and joints, mainly bone mineral density. So it's a combination of imaging. So the scientific value of it is, well, there's a lot of scientific value to doing imaging. So imaging extends the description of diseases. So it provides you with information that you can't get just by looking at someone or from someone who tells you this is what I've got through self-report. And this is something that can apply to a lot of the UK Biobank data. It can extend the usefulness of other data by integrating it with the stuff that's already been collected. So a lot of benefit of doing a lot of these additional assessments is that we've already got so much data that is unique that by combining another, large amount of specific data on, say, like imaging, on genetics, lifestyle, diet, yada yada, you're combining that with that existing data. So you're opening up the opportunity to do so much more than what could have been done previously. It can be used to study how diseases develop. So imaging is, showing you the pathological development of diseases before they might have presented themselves. So before you have symptoms. Not just that, it might provide insight, especially in UK Biobank, into things that could indicate the risk of developing disease in future. Things that we don't know at the moment whether they are indicators of future risk of disease, because it simply hasn't been done at this level of, at this scale. And of course, the large population size of 100,000 allows the investigation of associations between imaging and non-imaging measures and many health outcomes. So imaging has been done in other studies before. It has not been done in 100,000. It has sometimes been done in several thousand, but usually, say, the brain in the context of a dementia study, the heart in a study on cardiovascular disease. Whereas here, what we're doing is imaging a range of different organs in a study where we are not focusing on a specific disease. So now you're able to combine, say, the cardiac scan with the brain scan, which might tell you something about vascular processes and maybe risk of dementia. And so it's kind of repetition of other points. So for an overview, the pilot phase actually began in 2014-15 in Stockport. So 5,000 participants took part in this. The pilot was already the largest multimodal imaging study in the world. The main phase is now ongoing. So obviously 95,000 participants need to take part to reach 100,000. So that involved 18 people each day coming through 7 days a week. And you will be emailed an invite. You phone the Participant Resource Centre in Cardiff if you're interested. They go through a bit of pre-screening, ask you some questions that mean whether you can or can't take part in it. Also give you a bit more information about what the imaging will involve, and then they will book an attendance date for you. So it's still ongoing in Stockport, the main centre, but since starting in 2014 and 15, we have centres in Reading and centre in Newcastle, and we plan on opening one in Bristol as well. So good news is you don't have too far to travel either to go to the centre. So just to give you a bit of an overview of what is captured in the imaging study. So the brain. So there are a range of different brain scans that are performed. A couple of them are structural. So these give you information on what the brain kind of looks like, different areas of the brain. So, this here might give you information on something called atrophy, where your brain is experiencing shrinkage or neuron loss. But it can also give you information on things like microbleeds or subclinical stroke. And then we also have functional imaging. So functional imaging is capturing brain activity now over a period of time. So we have two different kinds of functional imaging. Task, where you will perform a fairly basic task, it just asks you to engage in something whilst you're in the scanner itself. And then the scanner is capturing different kinds of activities in different regions of your brain as you are doing that task. And also resting fMRI. So we do let you have a little bit of a rest amongst all this imaging. And this is useful because even when you're not actually engaging in anything cognitively, your brain is still doing a lot, it's still undergoing a lot of activity. So even what's going on in the brain as you are resting, as you are not engaging in something, is telling you interesting information. And we also have diffusion imaging, which is kind of modelling the connections between different areas of the brain. We have the cardiac scan. So this can measure heart anatomy, also blood flow, and also novel approaches are being developed already using this data to produce, for example, 3D models using 2D scans. So with the heart at the moment, whilst we have had cardiac MRI for a while, we don't really have the ability to easily extract features from cardiac scans. Well, as a result of all this data in the UK Biobank, groups are now working on a variety of different things that can extract all this interesting information that can tell you about the structure and the function of the heart. The body MRI. So, we already have, again, this kind of demonstrates what imaging is adding to the data that we already have. So we have BMI, we have like measures where it's telling you a bit of, useful information about weight. But take, for example, here, you have two individuals, they have the same BMI, but when you have a look at the body MRI, this individual on the left has almost 3 times the amount of internal fat as this individual on the right. So you're able to get a clearer picture as to what is going on in the body. So we know that fat, where it's distributed, can have much worse consequence on cardiovascular disease, even if your BMI is the same as someone else. And we're able to, for example, then look at distribution of fat. So subcutaneous fat, this is fat that kind of sits just below the skin. And then internal fat is thought to be much worse for you in terms of affecting your health. And this is fat that is around the organs. Obviously, you can't get this level of detail unless you perform body MRI. And also fat in the liver and the pancreas. And the carotid ultrasound. So this measures the thickness of the carotid arteries, gives you information on the volume of those arteries, also information on plaque volume. And this plaque in these arteries are a cause of atherosclerosis. I don't know what it means, it's a complicated word to say, but that's what it contributes to. And again, this is a pathophysiological process of a disease that you can't really capture unless you image it. And then the DEXA. So the DEXA measures bone density, so full body bone mineral density, but also in specific areas such as the spine, the hip and the knee. And this can identify fractures. And it also provides different detailed measures about body composition. And this is something that has also kind of been added onto the imaging study, so you might get asked to do this when you go to the imaging centre. So this is a heart monitor. This is used to detect irregular heartbeats, called subclinical heart arrhythmias. Again, it's subclinical, so there's no symptoms, you can only get it when you wear a heart monitor. And these are important as these may be related to future risk of heart attack and stroke. And as I said, they're asymptomatic. So this has actually begun So we are aiming to measure the electrical activity of the heart continuously for 2 weeks in 20,000 participants. So as I said, not everyone in imaging will undergo this. There's a selection process to see if you meet this criteria. And it is water resistant, so you don't have to go without a shower for 2 weeks just to verify that. And it doesn't, you see, it's not massive. It doesn't interfere with day-to-day activity and does not need changing. You might need a shave though if you're particularly hairy where they put it on your chest, so just to warn you of that. So I mentioned the actual pilot study itself was by far the largest imaging study. So it's all, you know, this is a range of the headlines that came out when the imaging study was initiated. But we also have plans then from the 100,000. I think this is meant to be starting this year to do repeat imaging in 10,000 of the 100,000. So re-invite 10,000 who had imaging 2 or 3 years ago. So this is a unnecessarily complicated figure that I've decided to use, so I've slightly simplified it here. The reason why repeat imaging is so important is that it obviously captures change over time. So it's not just, you know, brain volume or brain function at this particular point, because that might have been brain volume 10, 20, 30 years ago. What we want to try and capture is change over time and what that change might be indicating and whether that change is associated with future risk of disease. So this is an example from dementia. So this line here, so on the bottom, these are the different stages of dementia. So you have preclinical, and preclinical, that means you start to have biological symptoms, but before you have actual, you know, you're presenting with dementia symptoms. So, for example, MCI, mild cognitive impairment, and then dementia. So what this kind of shows is brain volume, on this axis is normal to abnormal. Brain volume is preceding the clinical symptoms. So prior to actually having a diagnosis of dementia, we know that brain atrophy actually occurs, although it's still not at the level where we can use it diagnostically. So being able to have repeat imaging, we will then hopefully, not just with the brain, but with all the range of images, not just with dementia, with a range of different conditions, be able to look at change over time between those 2 and 3 year scans and see if that change is then associated with, you know, additional risk of conditions such as dementia. So I just added in all those bits, but so this is where we are at the moment. So we've already imaged 33,000 participants. So we're already a third of the way there, and it's so thank you so much for those who've already been, and look out for the invite.